There's a rule in orbital mechanics that most people never learn, and it explains why some families stay wealthy for generations while others lose everything in one. An object in orbit doesn't fall because gravity pulls it down. It falls because it stops moving forward. The moment it slows to match something heavier near it, gravity does the rest, quietly, patiently, without ever announcing itself. Now hold that thought, because that's not physics, that's your bank account. Think about the last time you said yes to something you couldn't really afford. A dinner, a trip, a gift sized to match what everyone else was giving. You didn't do it because you wanted the thing itself. You did it because saying no felt like drifting out of formation, like falling away from the people who make you feel like you belong somewhere. And that feeling, the one that made you reach for your card before your brain finished the math, is older than money. It's older than civilization itself. For most of human history, being cut off from the group didn't mean embarrassment. It meant death. No tribe, no food, no protection, no survival. So your brain built a warning system for it, a system that still fires today every single time your spending doesn't match your circle's spending. It doesn't know the difference between a missed hunt 10,000 years ago and a missed dinner reservation tonight. To your nervous system, both register as the same emergency. Which is exactly why the pull works so well without you ever noticing it's working at all. And here's where it starts costing more than you think. Every dollar you spend to stay level with someone else's orbit is a dollar that will never orbit for you. It's not gone once. It's gone on a curve, the exact curve that was supposed to work in your favor for the next 30 years. Because money, left undisturbed, doesn't just sit there, it moves. It multiplies quietly, invisibly, the way a single stone dropped into still water sends out ripples too small to notice, until one day those ripples are waves large enough to reshape the shore. Spend the dollar today to keep pace with a room, and you don't just lose a dollar. You lose every future version of that dollar, the one that would have existed in 5 years, and the larger one that would have existed in 20, and the almost unrecognizable one that would have existed by the time your children needed it most. That's the part nobody says out loud at the dinner table, because saying it out loud makes the bill feel personal. Here's the piece that will sit uncomfortably with you, and I want you to actually feel it before we move past it. Your friend group isn't trying to sabotage you. Nobody is plotting anything. Nobody sits in a room deciding to keep you smaller than you could be. But every group, without exception, has a gravitational pull toward its own average. If everyone spends at the same altitude, the group stays whole, familiar, safe. The moment one person climbs, spends less, builds more, disappears from certain rooms because they're somewhere else building something that hasn't paid off yet, the formation feels the loss before it can name it. And formations, instinctively, without cruelty, without malice, pull their members back down. Not because they want to hurt you, because the same ancient wiring that once kept a tribe alive by keeping everyone close still runs quietly underneath every group chat, every invitation, every "you're being distant lately." So the family that actually breaks the pattern isn't the family with more willpower than everyone else in the room. It's the family that understood early that staying level with a group and building something that outlasts you are two different flight paths, and no one has ever managed to fly both at the same time. There's a number that should unsettle you more than any market headline ever could. Roughly 70% of family wealth disappears by the second generation. By the third, it's closer to 90. Not because the money vanished into a bad investment or a market crash or a stroke of bad luck. Because it slowly, socially, drifted back down into the orbit everyone around it was already living in. Bigger houses bought to match a neighborhood instead of a need. Louder cars bought to answer a comparison nobody spoke aloud. Weddings sized to impress cousins instead of to celebrate two people. Each choice small on its own. Each choice social at its root. Each choice quietly burning fuel that should have gone somewhere else entirely. Somewhere with no witnesses and no applause. Which is exactly why it's the choice almost nobody makes. Picture the moment itself, because it's smaller than you'd expect. It isn't a dramatic collapse. It's a table, a group of familiar faces, a bill arriving in the middle of the conversation, and a silent calculation nobody says out loud. Do I match what they're ordering, or do I let this one small moment reveal that I'm choosing a different altitude? Nobody at that table is thinking about your 30-year trajectory. They're thinking about the next 20 minutes. But you're the one who has to live inside the compounding consequences of that choice for decades after the plates are cleared and everyone has forgotten which round they were on. This is the part that changes how you'll see every invitation for the rest of your life. Wealth that actually lasts isn't built by earning more than everyone else. It's built by refusing to let a room decide your spending for you. The families who keep what they build share one strange, almost invisible trait. their money was never loud. It was never something to prove, never something performed for an audience. It moved in silence, redirected constantly, protected from the small daily leaks that look harmless one at a time and look catastrophic once you add up 3 decades of them. They said no to things that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with belonging. And they said it quietly, without turning it into a speech, without announcing a single sacrifice, because explaining a boundary invites an argument, while silence invites none at all. Here's what actually happens the moment you stop sinking your spending to your circle's altitude. Nothing collapses. No one disowns you. Most people, it turns out, don't even notice, because the truth is, they were never watching as closely as your fear convinced you they were. The threat was mostly manufactured, built by wiring designed for a world where the tribe really could see everything you did. What you feel instead, slowly, almost without realizing it's happening, is altitude. Distance between you and the pull that used to decide your decisions before you'd even finished thinking them through. Space where compounding can finally do the one thing it was always built to do, work uninterrupted, year after year, without you interrupting it every time someone else needed company at a restaurant you couldn't quite afford. This isn't about cutting people off. It's not about becoming cold or superior or vanishing from every table your friends still sit at. It's about understanding that a life built on constant thrust, constant matching, constant proving, constant staying level with whoever happens to be nearby never reaches escape velocity. It just burns fuel forever, staying exactly where it started, convinced it's moving forward because everyone around it is moving too. Motion and progress are not the same thing. One of them just feels safer. Real freedom, when you actually see it up close, looks almost unimpressive from the outside. It looks like fewer purchases, quieter rooms, a car that still runs perfectly fine sitting in a driveway that isn't trying to say anything to anyone. A life that doesn't perform wealth because it's too busy compounding it where no one can see. That's not deprivation, whatever the room tells you when you say no. That's the only known trajectory that actually escapes the pull instead of just orbiting it a little slower. And once you see this pattern, you don't get to unsee it. You'll notice it in every invitation, every just this once, every moment you're spending quietly agrees to match someone else's altitude instead of holding your own trajectory. The question that should follow you out of this video isn't whether your friends are good people. Most of them are, genuinely, without exception. The real question is simpler and colder and worth sitting with tonight alone, without anyone else's orbit pulling at the answer. How much of your family's future have you already spent trying to belong to someone else's present, and what would the next 30 years look like if you finally, quietly stopped? And there's one more thing worth carrying with you after this ends. The discipline you build today doesn't just protect your own trajectory, it becomes the gravity your children grow up inside. They'll inherit whichever pattern you actually live, not the one you meant to model, which means the real question isn't only what you're willing to give up tonight. It's what kind of pull you want to leave behind for the people who come after you, still deciding whether to climb or to match.